All right. So I'd like to introduce you to Athena. Athena is an anti-diet dietitian here in Ontario. And we met because I think you heard from another dietitian that there was a weight neutral anti-diet naturopath, and you were like, whoa. And so you reached out and we had an amazing conversation. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about what you do and how you can help, because so many people, dietitians, not always a safe place. So welcome.
Hmm. Thank you for having me. Yes, dietitians are not always a safe place. Agree with that for sure.
Uh, so why don't we just start with how you got into this? Both like maybe a little bit about how you got into being a dietitian, but more interestingly, how you landed in this anti-diet space.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. So, like Carrie said, my name's Athena Brown. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm a non diet or anti diet body inclusive registered dietitian, and I'm physically in Ontario. How I got into dietetics was for all the wrong reasons. I had a very healthistic view. I have lots of privileges. I reside in the straight sized body. I had education privileges, from a comfortable family in terms of finances. And my family was riddled with like heart disease. And I thought I was going to like save them all and, you know, get rid of, this genetic line of heart disease. And I also like grew up in my mom's kitchen. I'm raised on a farm, so had like a really strong connection with like food and gardening and growing and canning and 4-H and a lot of those like food skill. If you don't know what 4-H is, but there were a lot of food skill programs and things like that. So, in a small town and like a farming town. So, food was really important. I feel like my parents did a really good job with raising us to have a positive relationship with food. There was always, homemade cookies and brownies. My mom was a stay-at-home mom also too. So food was her love language as well too. So food is a big part of it. There was never any like good, bad foods or things like that. It wasn't until I was more in high school where that kind of projection, I guess, started. Whether it was engaging in disordered eating and then also having like really poor body image. And then that kind of like really changed when I moved to university and got connected with more grounded, like-minded, body positive friends and things like that. So that's kind of like what got me into dietetics. And that's how I started practicing being a very weight centric approach. And it's really evolved. So I've been a dietitian for 10 years. I've mostly worked in primary care, so at a family health team, and long-term care was kind of like my side gig. So I was very much a generalist. I worked with babies to geriatrics, every condition, disease, eating challenge under the sun. And I just found with working with clients that so many of their stories related back to this strong desire to fix or change their bodies, this underlying like poor body image, this wishful thinking from diet culture that if they could just change their body, they could live their best life or be happy, be healthy, be accepted, be loved, right? And so many of them feared food, engaged in disordered eating, and had super poor relationships with food in their bodies. And then there was like the cyclical pattern where like the adults learned it from the grandparents and then it projected onto their kids. So it was like constant deep rooted behaviors of this dieting mentality that was just generational, kind of passed down, right? And food is family and culture and emotion, and I feel like we forget about that a lot in our conversations, especially as my education as being a dietitian too. So it really didn't matter me talking about high fiber diet or how to manage blood sugars or meal plan, etc., when there was so much disordered eating happening, this anxiety around food, and this taking up so much space in their day. Stepping on the scale would shatter their mental health for the day or the week, right? And to me, this seemed much more important. And like the root of the problem was never being addressed by talking about fiber and, silly things like that. It was very band aid solution. So this really left me wanting to do more and more impactful work and not kind of cause and further promote that disordered eating behaviors. So I attended an eating disorder conference in Toronto, and Lindo Bacon was one of the main speakers. And she was really the first introduction I had of like health at every size, taking a non-diet approach. And I just remember sitting in that conference seat and like crying because I had contributed to so much weight stigma, weight bias, disordered eating, being really shitty to people. And it was just like sitting in the suck was like horrible. And I didn't want to continue to do that. So I engaged in a lot of professional development, got more into like the eating disorder space and learning. Fiona Sutherland, doing a lot of her education, professional development on health at every size and on diet approach. And I became a certified intuitive eating counselor. And that's how I kind of connected with Carrie on the other side of the tunnel. So my world and perspective, I guess, around nutrition changed dramatically. So in September 2021, I quit my full-time, permanent, stable job that like I had spent the last 5 years really trying to change, the culture, what I did as a dietitian. And I would still just get ridiculous referrals from providers that was just really not in alignment. And I was just getting so burnt out on trying to change their minds and their ideas and, trying to encourage clients in one way. And then they would go, to another provider and then just, be stigmatized. And it's just like, it was just very challenging. So I started my own private practice, and I really am selective of the people I want to work with, people that light my heart up. So I work with adults, generally women, and moms and families, helping them heal their relationship with food and their bodies, break that cycle of dieting, disordered eating, eating disorders, poor body image, and then help them raise like body positive, confident, intuitive eaters. So kind of putting that stick and breaking up that generational cycle that continues.
That's the one thing I really remember from that first time we spoke was like my big mission is to raise a generation that doesn't look to their bodies for their happiness and their self-worth. And you said exactly the same thing, maybe not in those words, but I was just like, oh yes. You said that you left primary care, so now you're on your own. And I mean, that's a huge change. And I'm busy applauding you, but also want to acknowledge what a massive risk and discomfort that can be. Now that you are out of that environment, how much do you still struggle with integrating the information that you're sharing with people? I know, like, personally, it's like you just said, it's very difficult sometimes. They let's talk to me and then they go to their doctor or their nurse practitioner or anyone else. I mean, I don't want to, it's not just Western medicine that does this. All of us do this. And then they come back confused and frustrated. And so I wonder how much you experience that still, and how do you handle it? How do you help your clients through that?
Yeah. So I think right now, when clients come to me, they're already kind of in the space of understanding that they don't want to diet anymore. Like they're at a place where they're already in that like acceptance mode and like ready for like a new way to apply, food and their relationship with their body. So that I think is like easier. And some of them have done a lot of like really amazing reading and are up on like, the latest kind of people that are really contributing to the change in this shift in paradigm, right? So that's always like amazing when they've read like a health at every size book or intuitive eating or have some kind of context, right? So I think they have awareness too of that kind of cognitive dissonance between like certain providers and things like that. I think it is trickier when it's like a client that has an eating disorder, because I can't in a silo work and help and manage that client, right? So really getting the therapist on board and the family doctor for like the medical monitoring. There has been some challenges. I'm not going to say it's all rainbows, but I guess it's just like really advocating. I always send like an advocation letter and explain like the work we're going to do and like talk about weight stigma and fat phobia in healthcare. Like this client has experienced a history of this. Just a reminder, like, type thing. I'm very upfront with speaking to them. I'm very okay to like stand my ground, because I really don't want the person to continue to be stigmatized. I think I've done a good job of like scoping out providers. So if they're looking for a naturopath, I think I only have two options, and Carrie's one of them that like I trust and feel like that's a safe place for that person to go. Same with mental health therapists. So if they don't already have one on board, then that's helpful. But just, I guess, empowering the client too with like how to navigate those conversations, talking about boundaries, how we can like slowly stand up for ourselves rather than like, confront the surgeon when you're on the table. Like that's a very vulnerable moment where we're maybe not like working all the way up to that, but just like really empowering them, but also like being an advocate for them as well. And yeah, I think from my previous roles, I've had lots of whether we call them arguments, discussions, whatever it is, like with providers. So I'm not there's still a person at the end of the day too. And I know like I don't have it all completely figured it out. Even as a provider, when I worked in more of like a weight centric manner, like I was still open in terms of collaborating and understanding other points of view. So I guess just being gentle with all people. Yeah.
Compassion. It's good for
Yes.
everybody. Yeah.
I know.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So as you've been working through, I mean, you've talked about some of the challenges. Are there any challenges that you've found being a weight neutral anti-diet dietitian that we haven't touched on yet?
I think just the focus that like most dietitians don't practice this way. I'd say it's maybe a ratio of like 10% do, 90% don't. In the States, there's like definitely a bigger steamrolling train like coming through there. So I guess that's definitely a challenging piece too, is not everyone like understands what that means. When people are like, give me a meal plan, Athena. And I'm just like, I'm sorry, that's not what I do. What dietitian does? Like, I don't even know. I don't even want to give you someone's name that's going to like suggest that. Right. So I think like unlearning my degree and like, well, not my whole degree, but just like the manner in which I was practicing. I was like all my practicum internship stuff, going against the grain is kind of radical. Right. And I was the fence sitter for like a very long time. So I'll be the first to admit that, being like weight neutral and weight centric. So, and I think too, like not everyone is ready for this message or is in a space, like a headspace to hear it. Right. So I think spending less time on convincing people, like I was saying before, was like really burning me out. So I think I've had greater awareness of like, if someone's not ready, like just respect that and like not feeling like you can't save all the people. Right. And then there are so many providers that are not on the page and will never be on this page. Right. Um, the whole bariatric industry and surgeons, like that is a big challenge, right? We're not maybe going to be changing all that money exchanging hands, but just, I guess, knowing that there's still going to be some harm that's contributed. We really need like a massive shift in our systems and structures. So, I guess not like trying to approach it all and just trying to work like in smaller steps and strides and just planting seeds. I always say that I'm always like planting seeds. It's really interesting, like connecting with a therapist. I had a good conversation the other day. One of my clients resides in a larger, higher weight fat body and is looking for a massage therapist. Athena, do you know a HAES aligned massage therapist? And I'm like, no. So I had a really good discussion with mine, being like, what's your comfort level with, having a patient, and like, is your clinic set up for, them? And I think that was like a really productive conversation. And like, she really understood and like got exactly what I was saying. It was just like, wow, this is a different point of view that I've never like thought of too. So I think just always having those conversations and planting seeds wherever you can.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think it was towards the end of 2019. I really realized how much I needed to find the other people in Ontario doing this work.
Yes, that's a great point too.
It was difficult to refer when I needed another person. And so it's been really great. Yeah. You're right. There are a lot of practitioners who are fantastic, but haven't taken the line that you and I have to say, this is how I practice. I'm slapping it on everything to make it really clear this
Yes.
is a safe place.
Yes. Yep.
And so there are amazing people doing great work. I've found some physiotherapists and massage therapists and chiropractors who are very open and willing, but they're definitely not going to label themselves the way you and I have. And that's okay,
Yep.
but as long as we know where they are, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I think our tribe is getting a little bigger and a little stronger, and a little bit
It
more
is.
finally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing. So, biggest learning through all of this?
What is my greatest learning?
Yeah.
That I think just people's relationship with food and their bodies is very complicated. It's full of trauma. There's lots of stigma, and there's lots of shame and guilt and oppression that happens. So I think taking a trauma informed approach, doing less talking, more listening, and believing my clients, I think is a big shift in what I've learned. Being less of the expert, which is just like so annoying because I remember so many dietitian conference being like the nutrition experts in Canada. And it's like, I'm not an expert. No, I don't like that title, but being less of an expert and more of like a guide or support person, holding space, going slow, which is so not in my character. We're very trained, like everybody's in the stage of change, like action, and they already want some like action stages, which that was like a really big learning curve is how do we get people like in pre-contemplation and contemplation and how we can kind of work through that rather than just giving action steps and like SMART goals and things like that. So, and just remembering too that like everyone is seeking connection, compassion, and acceptance. So, it doesn't matter if you're the doctor or if you're the client or if you're whoever, right? We're just trying to see connection in our life, really coming back to those like values based reasons of things that are motivating you and moving you forward has been probably my biggest learning.
Yeah, that was a huge shift for me also a few years ago when I started to change all of my programs and starting
Yeah.
with the values and setting goals that are not
Yes.
weight-based because people have no idea how to do that.
They
Because we've
don't.
not been taught
Exactly.
that. You want to work on your health? Great. How many pounds are you going to lose and how many minutes are you going to exercise? Like that's the
Mhm.
thing, right? What are you going to cut out of
Yes.
your diet? And so when people
Exactly.
know that they don't want to diet, then they go, well, how do I do that then?
How do I measure it? Yes. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So that's great. Yes. 3 key tips for our audience.
Yeah. So I think the ones I selected are really for parents who are wanting to raise body positive, intuitive eaters. So the first one is you yourself cannot be dieting. And I know the word diet doesn't always resonate with people, but any kind of lifestyle intervention, wellness trend, whatever it is that one of your intentions or goals is to like change the shape, body weight, morph, shrink your body in some instance, right? To lose weight. So whether that's, I'm not even going to go into the options, but whether you're dieting or not. So again, when you yourself don't accept yourself and your body, how does that make your child feel? Right? Your child is a direct genetic, dropping of your apple tree. And when you're showing all these behaviors, then they're kind of internalizing that their bodies aren't safe and that they need to, change or morph or be doing this when they're older or even now, right? So if you can set up those like diet culture free spaces and have a safe space, I think that goes like a really far way because what we do in the home has like the most power over, all of the external noise. And when we can come back to like what we do in our home is this, like those are really strong values that your kid will probably, come back to and be reinforced so many more times. As parents, you're kind of like the leaders of the wolf pack, right? So your role modeling and everything is always beats anyone else that's kind of spewing diet culture messages. So again, if you're embracing those, all foods fit, then like you also need to follow this too. You need to be sitting down and having that donut with your child or sharing that snack or having, you got to walk the line as well too. Okay. So that's one. Number 2 it's okay to try something new, be wrong, and like take a different approach. I think historically our child feeding practices have been very like parents are in charge, dictatorship. They tell them how much they can eat and when they can leave the table, and that, me as the authority figure can tell you, you need 5 more bites, when really that's not at all intuitive for the child, right? If they're feeling fullness in that instance, we're telling them like, don't listen to your body, listen to me, do it to please me, right? You can get your dessert after you accomplish what I set out for you to be consumed. So you're really shifting that trust, that innate ability for them to self-regulate when we do that. So if we're open to trying something new and being wrong, like kids are so malleable. And I think it's a really good lesson for them to learn too, that like sometimes we don't always get it right, like our approach or our preference of how we do something, right? So if you are interested, don't feel like your teenager is never gonna like be able to like hop onto some of these ideas or things like that, right? There's always an opportunity for growth. And it's great to be able to like showcase to your kids that you don't always get it right.
100%. Yes. Yeah. Fear of failure drives so many
Mhm.
behaviors that we wouldn't otherwise do if we were a little bit more comfortable with going, oh, well, that didn't work, and just moving on.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And if we've always traditionally done something, it's really like radical to like do something different, right? Especially when like your parents are maybe saying something, or your mother-in-law, or whatever, right? And I think with food and feeding, it's very personal too. So I know like when we started feeding our kids, like my mother-in-law would get offended by like what we're doing. And it's just like, you got to choose what you wanted to do. And like, we're going to maybe try some new things. It doesn't mean you're a bad mom or whatever that you're internalizing, but we want to do some different things. Yeah. So it's definitely not easy. And then the last point is you got to do the work yourself. So we know that role modeling for kids is the best way that they learn. So again, kind of alluding to the first point, like you have to walk the line and be following the things that you're encouraging them to do too, right? Um, you can be doing the work on yourself and still making a difference for your child as well at the same time, right? So don't think you have to have it all figured out to, start using food neutral language or things like that. There can be some really easy, small ways that you can slowly move along that, intuitive eating journey with your kids and fostering that intuitive eater. And then to go along with that is just to get support when you need, right? And making sure you're connecting with like a health at every size or intuitive eating dietitian therapist to kind of help you in this realm of things, because like we said at the beginning, they're not all practicing in this way, and there's a lot of harm or just misunderstanding that can happen. And kids have one time to grow and one time to kind of learn this stuff when they're at home, right? So it does make a big impact overall.
It does. It does. And with the kids, I mean, as you're saying those points, I'm just thinking of like so many of the yeah buts that I hear from my own clients, right? Of like my own patients of if I of course I want them to grow up loving their body. Like, okay, so
Yes,
can you mirror that for them? Well, no.
exactly.
Okay, so
Yeah.
let's start there, and
Mhm.
at least find the neutrality side of it, right? And you've used that word
Yeah.
many times, and I really like because so many of the women I work with say, "Well, I can't love this body." I'm like, "It's okay, you don't have to. Can you
Mhm.
respect it? Can you find
Mhm.
neutral ways to describe it?" And the
Yeah.
same thing with food, right? It's
Yeah, exactly.
neutrality is such a beautiful place to start.
To start, yeah. And it can be so awkward too. Like lately I've been trying to like be intentional with like just talking about body parts in front of my daughter and being like, I love my butt. And then we'll like share some things what we love, or like our hips or thighs or things. And it's just like, it's so awkward to me because A, that was never like talked about. It was always, the negative context growing up. And B, it's just like really funny to have that conversation because I've never had that conversation, right? Heard it or had it. So it's just like, yeah, your kids are going to love you regardless. And like, I think that's such a good point that like your body could shift or change dramatically and they still like think you're the best and like absolutely adore you. Right. So just trying to be, yeah, that light for your kid when you can be. Mhm.
Patrick and I used to do, we called it the 5 greats, and it was before bed, and
Yeah.
we haven't done it in a long time. I forgot about it till right now. But,
Okay.
we used to, well, reading stories, whenever we like, what are 5 greats? And
Hmm.
one of them always had to be something about our body, of like, this is a great
Hmm.
thing about my body. And it was just a way of fostering that gratitude and finding those,
Yeah.
thank goodness for. Um, and yeah, it was fun, and it's something that I haven't recommended to a patient in a long time because I forgot about it. But that was just
Yeah.
one of those strategies to, because then you have to think throughout the day of like, what are things that are going well amongst
Hmm.
all the things that are going terribly, because those are happening
Yes.
simultaneously. And
Yeah.
feeling grateful for some things does not negate the terrible feelings that are happening about others.
Of
But
course.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's fun watching my child use words in such a descriptive, non-judgmental way, and those are my proudest moments. Like,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
doing it.
Yeah. And they're so good at this too. Like I try this a lot whenever I'm doing like a presentation for schools, like get them to say like one thing you love about your body. And they immediately go to like the function,
But yes.
like strong legs to run really fast. Like they're so good at it, so good at it. And it's just like us adults that are always like, oh, you're so pretty and cute, nice dress. Like we're projecting so much of that like physical, but they are so good at it. And the things they come up with are just like hilarious. We were walking the other day, and yeah, we did this again. And my daughter Violet was like, she was getting hungry and she's like, I love my stomach and my mouth and my taste buds. Like she was going to like into such detail because I can eat my food. And I'm like, yes, like that is such a good point for like a 4-year-old to like even extrapolate. Like,
Yeah,
yeah, they're so.
I love it.
Mhm,
I think it
mhm.
was Dove who had done their big campaign thing, and one of the things that came out of their research was around age, but 8 to 10, which is grade 3-ish, grade 2, 3, 4, somewhere in that range, is
Yes.
when
Yep.
that shift from how my body works to how my body looks really starts to
Yes.
take root.
Yep.
Um, and that's where I think as adults we can bring ourselves back to that and really start focusing
Hmm.
on function and all the
Hmm.
very cool things that our bodies can do.
Yep.
Even if there's limitations, right? Like there are things I can't do
Of
anymore.
course.
I'm 45
Hmm.
and my body does not do the same things it did 15 years
Yeah.
ago. That's
Of course.
okay. But I can still do lots of other stuff, which is really amazing.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Hmm.
those are amazing points. And you've made a couple mentions of how this has impacted your parenting, but how else has this shift in your practice changed your life?
So I think just being more values driven, it just is so much more satisfying. Like I really love my job. Like I know people are like, oh, people say that, but like it makes me so happy. Like I had a client the other day that was like, Athena, when I look back in like 20 years, like you are going to be one of those people that like significantly changed my life. And like I get so teary when I think of that. And it's just like that is literally like the best compliment I could ever have. Like that'll be fine for like the whole year kind of
Yeah,
thing, you know?
makes us
And
feel
it's just like how they can like just trust you and, you know, have that relationship. I'm so grateful for that. It's given me more time and space for other important things, right? Connecting with people that obviously brings me joy, like I said. And it's just so validating to work with really wounded people and give them validation and respect and connection, which are just like very simple, basic things that we can do as healthcare providers. And it just makes such a world of a difference. So I guess just like really how I treat people and having this desire to always be mindful of other people's experiences, you know, regardless of their body size or their gender fluidity or just I guess all those like social justice issues was never something that was really on my radar before. So I think that's really changed my life. And again, doing more meaningful work rather than just slapping band-aids on people and encouraging more eating disorders. That's obviously made me feel like a better person.
yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
It is always so amazing to, again, just to meet people who are on the same path, right? Of like, we all started in a weight centric way of practicing because that's how we're taught. Like that is what is in school. it
Yeah.
feels normal. It feels so like we just don't even realize that it might not be appropriate.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
then once you get that moment or those series of moments that start to bring you into that of like, wow, these
Mhm.
people are really hard on themselves. And
Mhm.
why is this not working like it said it would in the textbook or in class? And then
Mhm.
really starting to branch out. And then, yeah, it's beautiful to
Mhm.
just see other people who are looking behind the curtain. And personally, it's exciting because I really haven't had any dietitians to refer to for
Oh.
so long because,
Mhm.
as you know, if we're not referring to naturopaths, it's not always a safe place. And more often than not, it really isn't.
Mhm.
So it's exciting that there is more of us
Mhm.
connecting and getting to know each other and sharing more resources and more information. That's just so good for our clients. Yeah.
Mhm.
Any one last bit of advice or a little nugget you'd love to leave everybody with?
Yeah. Of course. I think for anyone that's like embed or embarking on their intuitive eating journey or like body liberation journey or whatever we want to title it or call it, just being really gentle on yourself. This is really hard work. It's really radical. It's against the grain. And many of us are like reparenting ourselves and like deep wounds. So be gentle. Self compassion is not something we're taught or like encouraged to practice. So just getting back to that or slowly growing self compassion practice. And then lastly, like we've kind of touched on several times, but just get support from, if you're working with a dietitian, like Health at Every Size, non diet intuitive eating provider, or connect with me and Carrie. We have lists and connections with, medical providers, OBs, massage therapists, etc., to like find safe spaces, because I think that's a challenge in itself to put that onto patients, being like, okay, learn about HAES, but now like go find people that like also promote it in their practice too. So
Yeah. And to even know
yeah,
what
just
questions to ask. I
exactly. Yeah.
think sharing with you, my intention is to get like a mobile clinic set up over the next
Mm-hmm.
little while to be able to do physical exams for people in larger bodies and trying to even just find equipment that has a weight
Yes.
limit of more than 250, 300 pounds like that's it's difficult.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
Sourcing them out without spending a fortune is tricky.
Mm-hmm.
So then
Mm-hmm.
to expect a patient to be able to know, to ask, well,
Mm-hmm.
what's the weight limit on your table, and how big are your speculum, and how big is your blood pressure cuff? Do you just have the large, or do you
Yep.
have the extra large? And like,
Yes.
what
Yep.
size of your gowns? Like, nobody wants to
Mm-hmm.
ask these questions, so we can be asking those for them,
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Mm-hmm.
which is amazing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So fun. I feel like you and I could talk about a million things a million times. Um,
Yeah.
but this is a really nice introduction for people to know that there are Health at Every Size dietitians in Ontario. And for
Yes.
those who can't afford us, because let's be honest, there are a lot of people that cannot afford us, um,
Mm-hmm.
your podcast is a resource, which is called Diet Culture Dropout.
Yep.
And you've got some great things on there. There's some wonderful books. You are on social media.
Yes, I'm at Peacefully Nourished on Instagram, and I'm trying to dabble with TikTok. So, and of course on Facebook as well too. Yep.
You're the new Nina. I've not gone to TikTok yet. You know. Anyways, thank you so much for being here, and we'll put
You're
all of your
welcome.
links in the bit that goes below, and
Perfect.
you can reach out and find you and start learning and listening and hopefully connecting.
Awesome. Thank you so much for this opportunity, Carrie. I really appreciate your time and being able to share space with you as well.
Awesome.